going to concentrate mainly what's now, I suspect, more or less universally going to be called the 12-day war, as we say in the statement from the PCC. There's a lot in this war that clearly is choreographed. And I think you can't say everything, that would be ridiculous, but I think you can say that the beginning was choreographed, and certainly the end, most definitively, was choreographed. So let's begin first by saying I don't think that Socialist Worker and Alex Kalinikos are right this week that somehow Netanyahu and the Israeli government dragged Trump and the United States into this war. I think it's clear that, of course, while Israel always wanted this war, it was for the United States to give the go-ahead. So, we've had plenty of reports of US presidents in previous periods basically putting a stop, a red light to Israel wanting to attack Israel. We've had statements from Trump saying that he red lighted other bids to attack Iran. This time he didn't. This time what you had is a green light. And if we say that there were two, strategic goals, one, of course, is Gaza, the West Bank, the Palestine question, i.e. using war, in particular war with Iran, as a smokescreen to carry out ethnic cleansing. The other aim clearly was to degrade, to smash the Iranian nuclear program. Now, I'll talk about that in a minute, but it was clear from the start that you couldn't do anything decisive about the Iranian nuclear program, not only with the go-ahead of the United States, but the active participation of the United States. There was no idea of Israeli special forces or some sort of ground operation. I personally don't think there was any chance of Israel using its nuclear weapons. So it was the United States. And what we were talking about is B-2s and these 30,000 pound bunker busters. This had to be part of here's the plan. So we had Israeli planes, 200 took off. I don't know how many came back. Maybe some were shot down, but I haven't read any reports on that score myself. Quite the opposite. What I've read is Israeli control over the entire airspace of Iran. We also had Trump talking about 60 days, and this is the 61st. And we also had Trump talking about 2 weeks. And I have to say that I thought the United States would end up involved. I didn't think it would be so quick. And also, I didn't think things would be over so quickly. So that's me. That was my assessment. Indeed, I feared that this war might become protracted. Instead, what we saw is B-2s heading off from the continent of America, not Guam, not the Indian Ocean, and traveling thousands of miles. I've read reports of these pilots using pet pills to keep themselves awake on such missions. And we saw B-2s deliver these bunker busters, not 2 or 3 or 4, but many bunker busters. And we also saw the United States launch a Tomahawk cruise missiles. Now, we don't know, and I'm not in any position to claim I know what the result was. We're dealing clearly still, even though the fighting is over, we're still dealing with the fog of war. We're still dealing with propaganda. You can believe what you want to believe. Either no damage was done, or it was just superficial, just on the surface, or in Trump's phrase, it was obliterated. I simply don't know. And you look at the evidence. I mean, there isn't, for example, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, any evidence of radiation leaks. On the other hand, I've looked at, for what it's worth, satellite pictures of these bunker busters with the underground map of the what do you want to call it, the processing hall, and you've got one series of strikes at one end, whole series of strikes at the other. The real question is, did they get through? If they got through, that would certainly be obliteration. But even if they didn't get through, one would guess at some damage. And again, you weigh it up, and you have got Iranian generals talking about their program, their nuclear program being put back by months. Who knows? Either way, what we saw advisedly, I mean, what would you do faced with the United States? Clearly, there were back channels, and clearly there was negotiations going on throughout. And after those B-2 strikes, clearly they came to a deal, and it would be that Iran would be allowed its moment of retaliation to preserve some honor. An advance warning was given. Civilians were evacuated. I don't know. Either way, missiles were fired, missiles were shot down. One, as I understand it, wasn't on course and was allowed to proceed. But this was a token gesture by Iran. And I do think for those that are still committed, and, again, just reading Alex Kalinikos in Socialist Worker, there seems to be an element of that. What is it called? Itwad. Israeli tail wags American dog. I think that what we've seen is that thoroughly disproved, totally disproved, because what we had is precisely, there you are, the ceasefire is meant to come into operation. Some Iranian missile was either fired after or just before, I don't know. Israel moves to retaliate, in my view, eagerly, and Trump puts his foot down and uses the F word. I'll use it. I've got no problem myself. He says, they're fucking well carrying on fighting. And one can imagine what he said to Netanyahu as he boarded Air Force One on his way to The Hague and the NATO conference. To me, that was an illustration of its America and its relationship to its attack dog. It simply said, no, you might want to take another bite out of Iran. I'm not allowing you to. And I think that illustrated the relationship between the United States and Israel. After all, if Israel hadn't have complied, what would happen to spare parts for F-35s? What would happen in terms of the resupply of anti-missile missiles and the whole war machine of Israel? The spare parts, the replacements would have been denied. It was just inconceivable, and therefore Netanyahu bowed to the United States. Okay, we do have the bombast, in my view, in terms of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, saying that they defeated Israel. The regime survived thus far. In my view, that was never in question. To go for regime change, you need an alternative. There wasn't an alternative. You can't simply overthrow a regime simply by bombing. You could wreck the economy. You could decapitate the military and political leadership, sure. But I don't think that was the intention. In order to replace a regime, either you need an alternative regime waiting in the wings, or you go for a ground invasion. And that was never on. No one, as far as I know, in Israel has talked about that. That's just inconceivable. And no one in the United States has talked about that. That's sensible, that I've heard anyway. So in terms of what's happened, it's very hard to judge. I mean, that's all I would say. Maybe Iran is in a position within a month or so to start reprocessing. On the other hand, the fact that it's had these B2 attacks, maybe that gives it a diplomatic space to sort of back off and to lick its wounds. I don't know. I'm just not going to go there. All I would say, though, is if it doesn't do that, then there's the prospect of further Israeli, but crucially American attacks. And I have to say, after the B2 attacks, which I wasn't expecting when they happened, I was expecting them, but not when. And I got up in the morning and I looked at my phone, and there was reports of an Iranian retaliation against American base in Qatar. I just went, oh my God, this looks awful, because it looks like this war is going to go on and on. And I imagined in my head the Iranian masses suffering, one wave of US attacks after the other. I thought that if Iran moves, for example, to shut the Strait of Hormuz again, this would be a dreadful escalation, because it will bring massive punishment from the United States. And in the main, it would be ordinary people that would be suffering. So although we've had, attacks on nuclear scientists, attacks on Revolutionary Guard and military leaders, it's going to be ordinary Iranians that suffer. Thank God what we have is a ceasefire. Is the ceasefire stable? Again, well, no, of course not. How long will it last? Again, I think just impossible to say. Anyone can guess. Could be weeks, could be months, could be years. Will there be future, nuclear talks? I think we can say yes. Will they conclude satisfactorily for both partners or both sides? Open-ended. Again, I haven't got a clue. Will Iran withdraw from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty? I doubt it myself. But again, I could be wrong. And we certainly don't want to take votes in the Tehran parliament as anything other than gesture politics. So we've had votes about non-cooperation. We've had votes about the Strait of Hormuz. It's the supreme leader that decides these things. So this is something that he can say, well, I have that option, and I think we should treat it as part of, how should I put it, the game of maneuver that's been going on. Okay. Now, again, in terms of who you want to believe, I can't tell you that what I'm saying is the truth. I simply don't know. It's just a question of weighing up the evidence and coming to some sort of conclusion at the moment in the immediate aftermath of this 12-day war. But to me, at least, what this war illustrates isn't, again, as a socialist worker says, America's weakness, quite the opposite. I think what this war illustrates is America's strength. There you are, after 12 days of Israel's war and one wave of American planes and American missiles, we come to a ceasefire. The idea that that is an illustration of America's weakness, I'd hate to see what is an illustration of America's strength. So of course, America is in relative decline. Of course, China is a rival. But what is Iran? Iran should be a prosperous country, but it's been made into a pariah. It's suffered decades of economic war, and no one was going to come to its rescue. So, again, just listening to comrades talking about, the Middle East being, I should put it, on the edge of triggering World War III. Well, yeah, there can be a war against Iran, but does anyone seriously think that Russia or China was going to come to the rescue and say that if America attacks Iran, this will trigger a Chinese retaliation against America? I never thought that. I thought quite the opposite, that Russia, other than diplomatic protests, that China, other than diplomatic protests, wasn't going to do anything. We don't have a military treaty between Russia or China and Iran. We don't have something equivalent of, NATO, that if you're attacked, we view that as an attack on us. So Iran is isolated. Of course, it has friends, or did have friends, or still has friends in the region. But what are they going to do? So you have the Houthis. Yeah, they could take out some ships in the Red Sea, sure. Iran would be punished for that. What is Hezbollah going to do in Lebanon? We've seen what it's done. As far as I know, nothing. The idea of Hamas in the West Bank or Gaza doing anything, well, like what? We've seen the collapse of the Assad Baath regime in Syria. Okay, Iran has friends in Iraq. What are they going to do? They could have attacked American bases, but with what result? So I think the Iranian leadership, and I'm no friend of the Iranian leadership, that should be obvious, was well advised to go for peace, just as you would look at the situation. And we could argue about that. I'm not trying to set this up, but, the situation of revolutionary Russia suing for peace at Brest-Litovsk militarily. There was no choice. And I think that was the situation with Iran. So I don't think myself that the 12-day war illustrates America's weakness. I think it illustrates its strength, and we should be aware of that. And certainly if you were sitting in Moscow, I would be looking at the situation in Iran, and that wouldn't be emboldening me. If I was in Beijing and I looked at Iran, that wouldn't be saying, America, to use Mao's phrase, is just a paper tiger. We can easily overcome the United States. No, America remains strong. It is in relative decline, and clearly, if we look at Trump, what he's committed to, what he's trying to do, is reverse America's relative decline. Whether he succeeds, whether he can succeed, that's something that only the future will judge. But yeah, the idea that America, illustrated its weakness, I don't think that was the message that came with Trump's Air Force One landing in the Netherlands. Look at the response of NATO and the NATO powers. Remember the phrase "daddy"? Look at these, leaders of the NATO powers lining up to kiss the ring. That was the reality of the 12-day war. So again, what we got, as far as Trump was concerned, is loads of commitments to up arms spending, lots of talk of 5%, warnings to Spain to come in line. That's my reading of the situation. So again, just looking at Israel, looking at America, we're not expecting wild swing of public opinion when it comes to voting intentions, but just look at how things swung in Israel. Something like, wasn't it, an 84% amongst Jewish Israeli voters approving of its war against Iran. I would expect that to find its impact on public opinion polls when it comes to Likud and the coalition government. I would expect myself, I could be wrong, that also finding its reflection in public opinion polls in the United States. And of course, does Trump care? I would say yes. I don't know about whether he intends to run for a third time, but we're all mortal. And clearly he's an old man now. How much longer can he last? Will he, make way for J.D. Vance? I don't know. But again, just to close the book on that particular section, there was an awful lot of talk, in my opinion, from the beginning, nonsense, about if Trump went and attacked Iran, this would result in a split in his, MAGA base. Well, with this individual, with that individual, if the war had carried on for 12 months or 12 years, absolutely. But what we're talking about from America's point of view is a war that lasted hours, not days. So the total war is 12 days. But from America's point of view, this is an illustration of making America great again. So to me, my reading is that the MAGA base will be delighted by the results of Trump's military action and whipping Israel into line and getting a ceasefire and being greeted sort of as the conquering hero, well, at least with respect and fear in the Netherlands. That's my take on things. Okay. When it comes to American politics themselves, I think it's worthwhile just noting, and I'm not going to develop anything on this, just to note though, that things seem to have, Trump's had a good few weeks, should we put it like that? We've had the Supreme Court judgment on birthright citizenship, 1868. We all know why. This is the aftermath of the American Civil War, the Second American Revolution. This is about the Supreme Court saying that the sons and daughters of slaves are American. This is in the period of Reconstruction. And this is the Supreme Court reversing the gain of the Civil War, the Second American Revolution. I don't think we're about to see the reintroduction of slavery. On the other hand, it tells you what direction the United States is going in the same way, the judgment overruling lower judges, blocking Trump's executive orders. So from Trump's point of view, both internationally and domestically, he's had a good few weeks. Whether that lasts, that's an entirely different matter. I'm not making any judgment about whether Trump, as I said before, would be successful. We've seen trade wars. We've seen the latest action against Canada. I'm sure we'll see King Charles make special pleading for the Commonwealth country of Canada, global warming, and all the rest of it. I don't know whether Trump will treat King Charles seriously. I don't know whether it's just a photo opportunity. I suspect the latter myself. On the question of war, and I obviously agree with most. Why, Ant takes the view that what Karl Marx said is so antiquated when it comes to the question of war. I'm somewhat mystified. I take Karl Marx seriously, including the question of war and peace. You can't just dismiss Marx and his approach to war and his absolute partisanship when it came to the US Civil War, the Second Revolution. He was backing the Yankees. He was backing the capitalist North, as opposed to the slaveocracy that was aligned with economically and politically with Britain. That's what. But it's also worth pointing out, Ant, that both Marx and Engels were also partisans of the Fenians. And are you going to tell me that they weren't out for a capitalist Ireland, but an independent Ireland? Why is that important? Because Marx's struggle wasn't about, if only Ireland, was separate from Great Britain and could go its own way. And no, the important point was the independence of the working class in Britain from the bourgeoisie. That was what was important. And therefore, when we in Britain look at a war that's, for example, conducted, by proxy in Ukraine, we say we're against our own side. All things being equal, if it was just a question, if there was no 2014 Mardane and no NATO strategy of expansion, and okay, of course, in and of itself, it's a nonsense. But the point I'm making is really that Ukraine by itself, Russia is the aggressor. Full stop. If that's, but it's then a question, what about NATO? What about Europe? What about America? And therefore we take our position. Precisely as Moshe's argued, things are complex. And we are trying to take things in all their complexity. And precisely if you take Iran in its complexity, as opposed to its simplicity, here you are, a country that isn't acting as the proxy of Russia or China, was isolated, was going to be dismembered. What position should the working class in Britain take? In my view, it should take the position of being for the defeat of our own side. You've raised the question of revolution, and so will I, that we need to defeat our own side, not just through, and I'm in favor of peace demonstrations and all the rest of it, not just through peace demonstrations or boycotts or whatever, but precisely by overthrowing our rotten government and overthrowing US domination, not to replace it with Russia or Chinese domination. We've never argued anything of the sort. And what we're saying about Iran is you would defend Iran. Your biggest contribution to defending Iran would be overthrowing the theocracy and spreading working class revolution in the Middle East and beyond. That's what we're arguing. So a concrete question, not just some, I've got the answer to all wars for all time, but precisely a concrete analysis. And as I say, I'm not saying because Marx took the side of the Yankees, therefore we have to take the side of the Yankees. Obviously not. And we're not saying that anything but America. We're saying that the realistic strategy is working class rule, overthrowing capitalism. That's what we're saying. But crucially, we have a particular duty in Britain to oppose our own ruling class, to split our working class from our own ruling class. That's our approach.